What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the second part of my show for tonight of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. This is James Krasnerick here. In my previous segment, I detailed how I think the NBA Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals will go down. I hope everybody listens to that and enjoys it. I'm not giving away any spoilers, so you're gonna have to listen to find out what I have to say. But let's just say it's gonna be interesting, and I predicted a couple of sixes either way. I like to think of it this way: 6 games. It's like weird because when I predict, and tonight I'm picking a couple of sixes too because it's just weird because I can't see any of these series being one-sided, but I can't see them being that particularly close. Maybe one of them, but I don't know. All right, so let's get down to business here. We've got the Chicago Blackhawks and the LA Kings in the West, and the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers in the East. Now, before everyone goes on and says, "Oh, you already saw game one between Montreal and New York," if you pick New York, you're picking it. You know what? For one, you haven't even heard my pick yet. Number two, I'm not even thinking about game one because, for one, I didn't even get a chance to watch most of it. Okay? I was at work whenever most of the game went down. So I didn't really get a chance to see much of it, but I'm going to be basing it off what I saw in the previous two rounds with the Canadiens' wins over the Bruins and over the Lightning, and the Rangers' wins over the Flyers and the Penguins. So let's start off with that. We have the Rangers taking on the Canadiens. You look at these two teams and they're very similar. You look at the Rangers, they're a stout defensive team with a great goaltender. You look at the Canadiens, a stout defensive team with a great goaltender. And this playoff run, though, they've been scoring some goals. If anything, I think that the St. Louis trade for the New York Rangers, because I was talking some hockey with some of my friends. We were talking about that trade back when I went down. St. Louis goes to New York and Ryan Callahan goes to Tampa. I said Tampa Bay just doomed their chances of being a contender for the Cup, and New York just bolstered their chances of winning it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, my reasoning is this. You give a guy who won the Art Ross last year, who I believe has been an MVP, who has won a Stanley Cup and has all kind of veteran experience, and he's got some external motivation with the unfortunate passing of his mother. My prayers are with him. But you add that to a New York Rangers team that is hungry, has a really good defense, that has a really good goaltender. You put that together, and that's a recipe for success. And meanwhile, you send Callahan down to Tampa Bay. So you've pretty much, in less than 12 months, stripped Steven Stamkos of Vincent Lecavalier and now Martin St. Louis, and you're replaced with Ryan Callahan. Oh, by the way, Callahan has never really been that good offensively in his entire career. If you look at Ryan Callahan's numbers throughout his career, in the regular season, he has never scored more in the professional ranks than 29 goals in a season. And the playoffs, the most playoff games he ever played in his career was in 2012 when the Rangers reached the Eastern Conference Finals and ultimately fell to the New Jersey Devils. 20 games, he scored 10 points. Not very effective. Not a guy who's really a guy you want, to be taking the puck's responsibilities. Stamkos can only do so much. But at the same time, Stamkos could have done more, but that's a different story, different time. The St. Louis trade has really given the Rangers some new life. They've given them, the Rangers finally have that little bit of offense that they've been lacking for the last 4, 5, 6 years that has kept them from really advancing far in the playoffs. Yes, they've beaten teams like Washington and this year Pittsburgh and other really good teams like Ottawa when they had a good team, but they never had the offense to do it. It was mostly just Lundqvist and the defense. Now they can score some goals. Now they've got some credibility, and honestly, that makes them dangerous. On the flip side, you have the Canadiens, a team that's very similar. I believe it's either two or one time, I don't know, gold medalist at goalie in Carey Price. You've got PK Subban who's scoring goals. You've got a team that has a lot of talent that is finally starting to click emotionally. They swept the Lightning in the first round, and to go into Boston in Game 7 and take out the Bruins on their own home ice, that's really impressive. To shut down that team in their own building in a Game 7, to beat them twice in a series in Boston, that just takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of mental tenacity, and they have it. I would have to say, if you compare them to the Rangers, this is literally going to be a physical war. This is going to be a war because you've got two teams that are defense, two teams that are tough, two teams with goaltending. But at the same time, you have a little bit of an advantage for the New York Rangers when it comes to offense. The fact that they can score now more with Martin St. Louis versus the Canadiens. And if you look at the roster the Canadiens have this year, and you look at them statistically, the most points scored this year was Max Pacioretty and then PK Subban, 60 points and then 53. Now, if you compare them to the New York Rangers, you have Zuccarello, Stepan, Brad Richards, and in my opinion, of course, the biggest contributor this year, you've got Martin St. Louis. He's had 8 points with them, and when he was with Tampa earlier this year, he had 69 points. He had 61 points before being traded in 62 games. That's a pretty impressive total. That really is. That just goes to show that he is, still got it, even at the ripe old age of 38. Most guys would be slowed down by then. He's just getting started. Now, when these two teams match up against each other, you really have to go ahead and decide who do you think is the better lowest one. I have to say, at goaltending, I think there's actually a very, very close, tight edge to the Rangers. Because Carey Price, as good as he's been, has never been this far into the playoffs before. And Lundqvist has been in the conference finals, and he's been through the second round of the playoffs numerous times. If you look at the results this year and the two teams that played against each other, they played against the Montreal Canadiens 3 times, lost 2 of them. 0-2 was one game back in October. Back in November, they beat the Canadiens 1-0, and then they lost again to the Canadiens in overtime 0-1 on April the 12th. But whenever I think about this series and I think about, who has the edge, who is the, more rounded team, I think right now the Rangers are playing a little bit better. And I know Montreal was better defensively than Boston. Actually, Montreal's a better defensive team than the Flyers and the Penguins, two teams that have had very, very many defensive struggles the last few years, playoffs and non. I think the Rangers still have enough goals to see themselves through to the Stanley Cup final. I'm picking the Rangers to beat the Canadiens in 6 games. For the record, my opinion of Game 1 had nothing to do with this. I think Game 1 was a fluke because how many times in the playoffs does a team go out there and put up 7 goals on an opponent? It doesn't really happen very often. So that's why I completely throw my opinion of Game 1 out the freaking window. It doesn't matter. My opinion going into this series is the same as this is now. Is that the Rangers are slightly better. Their defense and their goaltending may be somewhat of a push. But when you compare offenses, I think right now the Rangers are scoring a little bit more. So I'm going to have to take them as a slight favorite. And now moving on to the Western Conference Finals. But first, my prediction, Rangers in 6 games. And now moving on to the Western Conference Finals. You've got the Chicago Blackhawks and the LA Kings, the last two Stanley Cup champions, the last two Western Conference champions, the last two teams standing in the West for the second straight year. These two teams have been the best teams in the West for the past 2 years. There's no doubt about it. The Cups you have to go with actually can probably go back to 2011 because the Kings have been in the playoffs for a while, and the Blackhawks have been a team always knocking on the door. And then you got a Cup run in 2010. Then you got a Cup run last year too, which was one of the best teams in the history of the NHL. One of the best seasons. Now, if you think about it, I would like to say right now that this is a complete and total contrast to styles, and that's what makes this series good. Chicago's offense with Sharp, with Taves, with Kane, with Hossa, going up against the defense of the Kings with Jonathan Quick, a goaltender, Dustin Brown. But it's not as big a contrast in styles as you think. When you've got two units going against each other, and you've got irresistible force versus immovable object in terms of sports, oftentimes you need to look at the flip side. You've got to look at the defense of the team with the better offense, and you've got to look at the offense of the team with the better defense and see how they match up. You've got to flip it. So that would be LA's offense against Chicago's defense, and in my opinion, that is a clear edge to the LA Kings right now. Because if you look at the way they're scoring, they pounded the Ducks. I know I said the last game was a fluke, and I think that this one was a fluke too. I do think it was a fluke that they took out the Ducks, that surprisingly. But, think about it. They were putting up goals on the Ducks all regular season, all game long. And if you look at the NHL standings for this year, and you look at league standings, and you compare defense, Chicago's defense was 13th in the league, giving up 220 goals. Anaheim's defense gave up 209, gave up fewer goals. And if you look at also the first round opponent, San Jose gave up fewer goals than them. It's just to the point where whenever you stop and think about it, LA has been scoring goals against some defenses that are better than Chicago's. And I know Corey Crawford has played better in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. But what I don't think is being taken into account is the fact that the rest of the Blackhawks defense, pardon me, sorry I dropped my phone, it's not as effective. The rest of the defense, it's basically just Corey Crawford making some saves and some average results from everybody else. Whereas the Kings, this postseason, if you look at their playoff log, they've scored at least 4 goals three times, at least 3, 9 times. They're scoring enough goals to win games. And I know the defense has had to play well, but the offense is making things, a lot easier. Like when you go back to that Cup run that they had in 2011 to 12, that was a team with Jonathan Quick leading the way. That was a team with just almost complete and solely defense. Like you look at the games they lost, the one against Vancouver, the 2 against the Devils in the final, and the 1 game against Phoenix in the Western Finals. Those were games where the defense of the opposing team just completely shut them down. But in every other game, the LA Kings, their defense was just incredible. Created turnovers, created puck opportunities. Now let's look at the Blackhawks. You look at them. Their offense is probably the best in the league right now in terms of how well-rounded it is. Hossa, Sharp, Taves, and Kane. You've got 2 Conn Smythe winners on that team. You've got guys that can score goals and they're getting healthy again. You look at the series against the Wild, scoring goals. You look at the series against the Blues, 4 straight wins. They're scoring goals, and they're doing it consistently.